Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and we just got a revealing report that seems to indicate some trouble for console gaming, or at least that's how fans are currently taking the news. I, however, view this in the light that this is why Xbox and Sony are currently changing. It is out of necessity, and we're going to get into all of that today, and then also the biggest planned Nintendo Direct of all time. Nintendo officially confirmed it themselves, so do make sure to stay tuned for that, and we'll get into that as well. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go get right into things, though, starting off with the Resident Evil series. According to Dusk Golem, he claimed that Capcom has some big plans for Resident Evil on the Nintendo Switch 2. He said that, yeah, they've been working on porting all the RE Engine Resident Evil games to Nintendo Switch 2 for a hot minute now. Requiem should be landing on Nintendo Switch 2 as well. There's grapevine rumors that there's a Nintendo Direct this week and RE7 is going to be there at least. Now, you have to kind of keep in mind that he didn't claim that they'll all be there at the Nintendo Direct this week. Resident Evil 7 is the only one that he could quote-unquote confirm himself, but as long as he's correct in the grand scheme of things, I mean, this could potentially mean that Resident Evil 2, 3, 4, 7, Village, and yes, Requiem as well, will all make their way to the Switch 2 at some point. And I mean, these are all excellent games, and truthfully, I think there is some logic behind this rumor. Now, I'm not saying that it's without a doubt going to happen, but the Resident Evil RE games are very well optimized. I mean, they're all playable on the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, and they look absolutely fantastic on those consoles. Now, they're limited to 30 frames per second, which, that's to be expected, but without a doubt, the Switch 2 should, on paper, be capable of running these games as well. I mean, for that matter, they're all playable on the Steam Deck. So, I think this leak is, at the very least, plausible, and who knows, maybe, just maybe, we'll get a more official announcement here in just a few days. Now, we also have another demo to look forward to, as Sonic Racing CrossWorlds is speeding your way next week. We can see the official announcement here, which reads, a free single-player demo for Sonic Racing CrossWorlds will be arriving Wednesday, September 17th at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time. Now's your chance to try out the game ahead of its official release. So right away, it's free, and free is good. Seriously, though, if you're on the fence on whether or not you want to pick it up when it releases on September 25th, this would be a good way to test the waters and see what you think. I do think it's a very interesting year for kart racers, though. Of course, Mario Kart World launched just a few months back. There's also Kirby Air Riders on the way. So there's really some steep competition this year. But this is the one multi-platform release, which bodes well for Sonic Racing CrossWorlds. It's also doing a lot of crossover characters, even outside of the Sega universe. So I'll be interested to see how fans react to its launch here in just a few weeks. Now, speaking of Sega, it sounds like they have some big plans for this year's Tokyo Game Show. They recently launched a TGS website that showcases their exhibit, which interestingly includes 4 quote-unquote coming soon titles. You can see their page here, and yeah, it looks like they will have some surprise announcements here in just a few weeks, and I mean, Sega is probably one of the more intriguing publishers right now, or at least in my opinion. I mean, they have a lot of stuff in the pipeline. Of course, they're on a mission to revive some of their dormant franchises like Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio, Golden Axe, and even Echo the Dolphin. So, I mean, maybe an update for some of those games, or maybe even a reveal for yet another unannounced project under the same mission. I'd still personally like to see a remaster for Skies of Arcadia, just kind of throwing that out there, but they have a lot of franchises that they could potentially work on. So who knows? But they could also reveal another Yakuza game. It seems like they have a new Yakuza entry pretty much every year anymore, so that's possible. And there's even that other RGG game, Stranger Than Heaven. It's kind of like a more mature-rated Yakuza game, but either which way, I'm very interested to see what Sega has in store at this year's TGS. They really are one of the better publishers in today's industry. Okay, so let's go and get into the console industry and an alarming trend that was brought up by Circana. This was posted up by Matt Piscatella, and he said that from Circana's checkout service, $100 plus income households now account for 43% of U.S. video game hardware purchases, up from 36% just a few years ago. 18 to 24-year-olds accounted for only 3% of video game hardware purchases during the 12 months ending on July 2025, down from 10% during the 12 months ending in July of 2022. So, for whatever reason, young adults are becoming less interested in consoles. I mean, they were already in the minority as is, but now at just 3% of new consoles in 2025, that's shockingly low, to the point that some people are now jumping to the conclusion that young people just aren't interested in console gaming anymore. You know, they would much rather play on their phone than on a console. That's kind of the assumption right now. But I don't really think that that's the entire story. While this definitely isn't a great sign for the future of consoles, I think the most likely reason for this decline is specifically because of price hikes. The thing that stands out to me about this information is that it's specifically talking about young adults, and a lot of time, young adults aren't financially stable. You know, this is a time of life when people are going through college, they're paying bills for the first time ever, and, you know, that's with an entry job or a minimum wage job. So when consoles and games keep raising in price the way that we've seen this generation, and that goes side by side with just prices for everything going up, you know, this is kind of the result of that. So I don't think that this is necessarily because young adults aren't interested in consoles. Though I will say that PC gaming is on the rise, but rather I think the number one reason that this is happening is because the game industry has kind of priced themselves out of the market for this specific demographic. They just can't afford these consoles or the increasingly high-priced games, all while prices for everything else is going up as well. So that's how I kind of look at this, but I will add this much. I've talked about this before, but Sony and Xbox haven't exactly done a great job at reaching the younger generation. And I'm specifically talking about kids. If Xbox and Sony wants to ensure their future is bright in the console business, then a part of that is also introducing their ecosystems at a young age. A lot of us, including myself, was introduced to games as a kid. And that wasn't through hyper-mature games. It was through games like Crash Bandicoot, Pokemon, Mario, and Banjo. And then as we got older, then we started to play the more mature games as well. Now, Nintendo has done a great job at that, but Xbox and Sony, on the other hand, they leave a lot to be desired from that point of view. Now, another thing that this information kind of tells us, though, is why Xbox and Sony are changing. This generation has been stagnant. All of the statistics has pointed at that for years now, including this where we're seeing young adults decline. And that's all while game budgets have continued to rise to an outrageous degree. So it kind of forced Xbox and Sony to embrace one another. They need each other's user bases to more or less survive. They need to be able to sell more copies of their games, and that's why games like Helldivers 2 is on Xbox and Forza Horizon 5 is on PlayStation. If they could have continued their exclusive strategies as is, then I'm sure that they probably would have done that. But by this point, they kind of need each other, and a lot of this is because of their own mistakes. However, will it lead to a better and more inclusive future? That's one way to look at it, but let me know what you all think about this. Do you think that this is alarming, or do you think it's fixable for the next generation? All right, now let's go and talk about the big Nintendo Direct, because it's now 100% confirmed, and when I say big, I mean technically it is the longest Nintendo Direct of all time at 60 minutes. This was posted up by Nintendo as they said, join us on Friday, September 12th at 9 a.m. Eastern Time for a Nintendo Direct. Tune in for roughly 60 minutes of information on upcoming Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo Switch games. So there will be some Switch 1 games, which, that's to be expected. The Switch is one of the best-selling consoles of all time, and it's going to continue to get support for a long time as well. But yes, this is the big General Direct that everybody has been waiting for. And I kind of hope that this is a lesson for everybody. Every single year, there seems to be rumors in June, July, and August about a new Nintendo Direct for that specific month. And oftentimes, that turns out to be true. But they never meet expectations because those directs ends up being smaller. However, Nintendo really seems to like the month of September for their big general directs, and I think we need to keep that in mind going forward because those rumors will return in the year of 2026. Whatever the case may be, though, this being the longest direct ever bodes well for the Switch 2 blowout event. I mean, there's various games that we still need release dates for, like Final Fantasy VII Remake, Elden Ring, and obviously, we all want to know about Metroid Prime 4, which I'm fairly certain we will get that information here. In fact, another rating for Metroid Prime 4 popped up online just today, which raises my confidence even more that it will indeed get its release for 2025 as originally planned. I know there's concern that it won't, but Nintendo has reassured us multiple times that it will launch in 2025, and the fact that multiple ratings have popped up just these past few months, and that leans into the plan still being for 2025. This being a big general direct, though, there's going to be some surprises. Of course, we talked about Resident Evil earlier in the video, so that's one possibility. There's also Splatoon Raiders, which we still know next to nothing about that game other than it being a single-player spinoff, so maybe a full gameplay reveal with a release window. And then what's really interesting about this specific direct is that it falls just one day before Mario's 40th anniversary. So I 100% expect some kind of Mario-related announcement. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be the next big 3D Mario game per se, but I think they will at least have something Mario-related to show fans. Now, that could be a spin-off, it could be a remaster. I mean, we still haven't gotten a remaster for Mario Galaxy 2, just saying. It could also be new merchandise, a new Switch Online edition similar to Mario 99, or it could even be a first look at the next Mario movie. So they have a lot of options that they could show fans, and, just kind of given that Mario is their most used mascot, I would be shocked if they don't have at least something to show. Either which way, though, on paper, this is probably one of the most exciting directs ever, and I'm really excited to see how they get the Switch 2 generation kicked off for their first big direct. Of course, I'll update you right after the showcase, but until then, give me your predictions in the comments below. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.